Hello everyone, Falcon here. Welcome to my second PoE2 build diary entry. Alright, so the super quick TLDR before I go on my usual ramble. Number one, crit scales, absolutely fine. You will absolutely, with Hexblast, get to super late game, tier 16 maps and be able to completely crush them using a critical strike based build, using Blood Mage. It works, I can confirm. Secondly, if you do want to make it work, you do need to go wand plus focus rather than staff. The reason for this is because both of these items can roll 100% increased critical strike chance for spells, which is the only place where you can get such a large amount of crit. Unlike PoE1, in which you could actually get crit strike chance in many different places relatively easily, in PoE2, it's actually much more difficult to scale crit chance versus critical strike damage. The damage you get mostly from the tree itself. So it's kind of inverted from what we have in PoE1. So this is very important. I think staff is not the way to go. You need the crit chance. Focus plus wand is the way to go. Unless you need even more defense, then maybe you can switch to focus for shield. But that's a very hard trade-off to make, to be honest. Thirdly, I have noticed that once you get to late game, mana sustain becomes a dramatic issue. It's actually really not funny. Basically, once you have like level 18 to 19 base skill gem, plus you start getting more levels, for example, from the wand or a staff, plus, let's say if you try with a support gem that gives +1, or the node that gives +1, these things make your mana cost so high, when you also plus add the cast speed increases that you will eventually want to get, it becomes way too difficult to sustain mana. It has been a big issue, and because of this, you have to invest in mana regeneration. Absolutely. A potion is also not enough. I was hoping it would be enough. In 90% of the cases, it is enough. But for example, if you go to Sanctum and you try to do the 8th Sanctum, the final boss will murder you. Because that boss is like 4 map bosses in one. It is ridiculously tanky. You will just run out of potions. Fourth. So last time I was using this very special chess piece that decreased my mana pool and gave me a lot of spirit, and the corpse weight shoes. I think the chess piece is redundant. You don't really need it. The boots, however, I think are mandatory. These boots scale incredibly into late game. I didn't realize how much power there would be by the sheer fact that they scale off the corpse's life, and they actually can completely decimate all the packs, as you can see right now on the screen. They are absolutely mandatory, I think, because they make the clear incredibly good. They also make you much safer because you actually can clear a lot of the mobs without having to walk up to them, and you can just wait for the poison to take care of them. 5. Maps seem to scale more on damage rather than life. So in PoE1, monsters, as you went from tier 11 to tier 16, tended to basically have an exponential increase in their life pool, which meant DPS was everything and you had to invest a very large amount into DPS. However, in PoE2, it seems that the life scaling is not that extreme from tier 11 to 16. However, damage is. Damage definitely scales quite a bit. Because of this, you actually have to pivot towards investing into defenses. Glass cannons will not work. I initially was playing this build as a glass cannon. I very quickly started regretting this once I got into mid to late game maps. I was just dying over and over again. So then I made pivots, for example, to use that helmet that gives me ES, and life became much, much better. Lastly, Blood Mage. I think currently, as it stands in the game, unless GGG completely rebalance the Ascendancy trials, currently it is a horrible Ascendancy to take as the first one for a character. You cannot imagine how much suffering I had to go through until I was actually able to get the 6th point. And once I even got the 6th point, then I realized that I actually really need the 8th point. But the 8th point is even more ridiculous to get. The trial is way too difficult for what are ascendancies that could be build enabling. Until they fix this, I would never recommend anyone to start with a Blood Mage. You can do it. If you're extremely good at the game, if you have a lot of experiences, you will make it work. But you will make it work not because of skill, actually. You will make it work because of knowledge. Because you will just basically buy your way up. In my case, I basically just did a lot of grinding. I got really good gear. I crafted a lot. And then that gear pushed me through the trials. Okay, so that is the TLDR. You want to go crit, you can go for it, but it's not going to be easy, especially not as a first character. For the rest of you, we will now go into the deep dive, because If you look at the title of this video, this says PoE2 build diaries. It does not say build guide. I'm not making guides here, guys. And that's why I'm not adding like anything like a mobile fire guide thing. I'm not adding my skill gem links and everything is in a list. This is supposed to be just me talking into my microphone over some footage, discussing things. And that's it. If you want guides, you can make them on top of this content, but I'm not gonna bother with this. It's just not what I'm interested in. Anyways, okay, with the map out of the way, let's go to the client. So this time I'm going to be a fair bit more brief. I'm not going to go too crazy into all this insanity. It's not going to be a 1 hour video. Hey everyone, Editor Falcon here. So it did end up being a pretty much 1 hour long video. I'm sorry for that. But if you like the rambles, then just enjoy the content, I guess. I covered all the mechanics and everything in the last video, so if you want to make an actual like crit Hexblast, most of the ingredients were presented in the last video. This video is about which ingredients we are changing and in what way to make the build work fine. Okay, so where are we at right now? My Hexblast is at 41,000 DPS. However, once you add Sigil of Power and Wither, which for me right now is at 90%, this goes up to over in the range of I think 150,000 DPS. Which is a lot. It's enough that I could actually, I was comparing my footage for the final Sanctum boss versus Crip, one of the best PoE players, and I was actually hitting the boss, I would say, in the order of 4 to 5 times faster than him. Like my DPS was 4 to 5 times higher. So I think I really have no issues on DPS whatsoever. Crit definitely works. I plateaued at around 70% crit. At some point I had 80%, but I made some trade-offs to get more defense. Critical strike bonus at 300%. Both of these numbers should be increased. I think once you're really pushing this build into super late game, like actually going past tier 16s, I think your crit chance is going to get to around 80%. Your crit bonus should get to around 500%. Anything less than that, I think at some point you'll probably start running into some issues. But overall, this is the setup. Basically, I kept my concentrated effect. I'm going with considered casting to decrease my cast speed a little bit. I'm still using inspiration, it is necessary. And now I started using arcane tempo on the Hexblast. One of the biggest issues I have found is that Hexblast actually does not have a lot of good supports. This is actually a huge issue. At any point, I could have easily gotten myself the last socket, but I'm just not getting it because it's not worth it for me. I could spend the whatever many exalts it was, I think like 60 exalts to get this. The damage increase I will get is gonna be like 10 to 15%. For 60 exalts, I can get a bigger upgrade in my gear via defenses than actually bothering with this damage increase. It's a problem actually. There are not enough good supports in PoE right now. Especially for crit, I just don't like the way their supports are looking. The way they boost crit is in a really weird ways. I was expecting, without actually going really deep into it, to have a lot of very nice crit supports to suck it in. No, none of them are useful. I don't want any of them. They do some weird things like, for example, trade off crit damage for crit chance, which ends up being like 5% DPS increase for me. It's ludicrous. So yeah, Hexblast, anyways, you go with these ones. I don't think there's much to change here. Area of effect, yeah, this one, I guess if you wanted to focus more on clear, you would remove this one, maybe even changes for AoE. I played around with this. Once you have too much damage, you can probably remove this and change it for something else. Inspiration, at some point, you will probably also want to get rid of, or even change into life tap, or even get blood magic. I don't know, this is gonna be something for way down in the future, because this requires all 8 ascendancy points to fully solve, which I do not currently have. In terms of context, I'm level 85. I am farming tier 15 to tier 16 maps for the most part at this point. My gear is actually very good at this point. This is a very important caveat. When I start showing you all these stats, keep in mind, every single piece of my gear is over 30 exalts right now. Overall, I'm in the range of like 200 to 300 exalts. I've been farming quite a bit, okay? Though the build came together quite a lot earlier than that, however, those exalts were all necessary mostly for defense. The most important point was basically the 2 weapons. The 2 weapons will contribute the vast majority of your damage, unlike PoE1, where pretty much all your gear pieces contributed to your damage. Often the weapon wasn't even the most important one. Well, it was an important one, but it wasn't like super big. In PoE2, it's like 90% of your gear damage is coming from the weapons. So the weapons are the most important. And if you look at my weapons, I have some really nasty weapons. So my wand, basically 200% increased damage, plus free chaos skill gems. I will go into this in a bit. And as I noted earlier, the 100% crit chance. It's super important. The crit chance must come from the wand and the focus. Otherwise, you're just gonna lack the crit to make this all sensible. Yeah, on the focus itself, again, 100% chaos damage, so very high on the increases. I'm getting most of my increases to chaos damage from the weapons themselves. Okay, and the crit chance. So, what order should we go through this? So, first, I guess I should just talk to you about what I did to make the crit work. Like, what were the main changes that I had to make? So, relative to the old tree, so I made some things. I removed a few of the AoE nodes. So there were 2 wheels I was using for AoE. One of them I think I removed or decreased it a little bit. I don't remember which one. I also removed one of the skill gem duration gems nodes. I did this by actually fixing most of these issues with jewels. So I got jewels, for example, like this, which give me increased area of effect, critical strike damage. I got another one here that has also critical strike bonus and withered. What else was there? I got more critical strike here. What else? Critical strike here, cast speed, and also I think this one was very interesting. Yeah, this one has skill effect duration. It's pretty important to note the fact that you can get both skill effect duration and area of effect in jewels, which means basically you could fix both of these, like this wheel, and this wheel. You could actually remove these wheels at some point if you could solve the problem with very good jewels. So this is something to really consider. Actually, the jewel options are very good. It was pretty easy for me to get jewels that were pretty much useful to me with almost every single mod. So okay, use jewels to fix a little bit of that issue and get a lot of crit on them. The tree itself, I basically moved away from going through this path and actually swapped to the right-hand side. This is also important because I really needed the energy shield. So I grabbed my mana nodes. I started investing very heavily into mana regeneration at some point. Got the cast speed, got the critical strike chance. Recoup is very important, so I kept some of this just to keep my defenses going. I got a little bit of crit here because I was already in this location, because I was still using this node. It has skill effect duration plus chaos damage, so it's a perfect combination. Very good wheel. I got energy shield because it became a really important defensive layer. This entire wheel, I think, is critical. So I think these 3 wheels are some of the most important wheels in the whole passive tree. This is something I would rush. Like, these are really, really important. As is this one, as is everything here. This entire corner, I think, is actually questionable. If at some point you could somehow fix the area of effect and you didn't need to get all these wheels, but I mean, they're really good. Like, there's so much area of effect here. But if you could somehow fix this at some point, then I would get rid of this, even get rid of this, and just not path in this direction at all. And I would reroute to somewhere here. Because here we have this wheel and this wheel, which are really, really powerful. So in this case, we have these critical strike chance wheels, which are just crazy. Like, these nodes are really, really good. There's a lot of really good stuff in here. As is this whole thing. Someone noted for me that there was this thing, Event Horizon and Spaghettification, and I was like, what the heck? Are they smoking or something? And then I looked at it, oh, these are actual names of the nodes. Yeah, this wheel actually looks incredible. This is a very, very cool wheel with some very heavy downsides, however. I think late game, this is the way to go. You get this wheel and you get everything here. And you probably remove everything there. But anyways, I got some crit over here as well. I pathed up to over here in the northeast side. I stayed with this whole wheel. I think it's still a very powerful wheel. This outer node set, I think, is also removable at some point. Currently, I've done the math, and it turns out that, at least currently, these 4 nodes are actually worth for me to take over crit. I don't know, it's kind of weird. I think once I scale crit a little bit more, I could remove these and definitely go only crit. The cast speed stays. It's very interesting what happens here. So because we are already going into this wheel to get the skill effect duration, very close by we have Ingenuity, and this is a very funny thing. So I get this Ingenuity node, right? I change most of my nodes to be Intelligence. In my gear, I had to go very crazy with actually getting attributes. So 30 Dexterity, 30 Strength over here. I think I had some more somewhere else. But anyways, like these 2 with a lot of attributes, I ended up with a case where my intelligence is 194. For the skill gem itself, Hexblast, once you get it to level 19, I need 191 int. It's crazy. You literally do run out of int eventually. You need to get some extra attributes in the tree in your gear, otherwise you run into big issues here. It's quite interesting. So Ingenuity actually came out to be very useful for me. There's this node here, which I think is very nice, a super large increase in maximum energy shield. and then you got the crit here. So this is how I changed the tree itself, and this was all I really needed so far. I do not think that this is very efficient, however. You see, usually what I do is, well, I go pretty crazy with this stuff. When I'm actually properly min-maxing a build, I usually start Excel sheets. I will basically use, so in PoE1, I use special jewels. So there are these things called abyssal jewels. I would use a lot of template jewels, and I would socket in them one by one into a special tool we used to have, which was called Path of Building, for basically creating these builds and like testing damage and everything. And I would socket these jewels one by one and just check which one is giving me the most DPS to narrow down my stat balance. Like, how do I need to balance all my stats for maximum DPS? So I need to do all that to really optimize this whole tree, but this is way too much effort. And so this is just something that sort of works. I don't think it's optimal. I think the optimal stuff is probably here because these wheels just seem very, very strong. But then locality is difficult because this is a little bit far off. So I think everything needs to be restructured pretty aggressively to make it work very well. Like, for example, the recoup here is also very good. I don't know, it's complicated. I think there's a lot of things you could do here. Like this tree, once you go crit with Hexblast, you have so many options. You can go the tree the way I have built it here, and you will be fine. But I think the more optimal stuff is to focus on stuff around here, I think. Also down here, I think there was something good. Anyways, that's the tree. Just so you know, this is basically the thought process of essentially I slowly moved out some of my skill effect duration, some of my AoE, a lot of my increased chaos damage, moved it over to crit. And of course, many of it I just got because I got more levels, right? Like I farmed up all the way to level 85, then it was fine. The critical strike transition actually happened around level 79, I would say, or closer to 80. I think around 80. I waited all the way to level 80. And by level 80, I was farming around tier 5, 6 maps. It was around that point that I was like, okay, it is time. The transition actually happened when I was ready to do the third lap. Once I got my 6 points, I did that when I was already feeling comfortable that once I do get the 6 points, I will make the transition to critical strike. Okay, now let's look at gear. I will show you how basically I solved my problems with the gear. So I got this crazy wand, right? Here's a cool tip. If you want to get really good weapons like this, so wands and focuses, they have a very limited mod pool, actually. What you can do is you go in PoE2 trade and you buy a wand that is almost good enough. That has, for example, out of these, so here we have 6 mods, right? All of them are perfect for us. They're all very good. Okay, cast speed is pretty low, but everything else is perfect. This wand actually had only 4 good mods. And I bought it for 2 exalts. I'm not joking. And then I just exalt slammed 2 more, and I end up with this. And this wand is probably, I don't know, it's probably worth like 100 exalts at this point or something. It's a really good wand. This focus I think I bought for like 30 to 40 exalts or something, and I think it was also missing 1 mod, and then I just slapped it in. I think I got fire resistance, so it didn't work out very well, but regardless, it's fine. It was a nice gamble. I think these types of things are pretty nice to do. So yeah, these are the most important pieces of gear, I think, to make crit work. It's very important. The priority list should be, you first must get critical strike chance, and you have to get +3 levels. As I noted in the last video, +1 level to skill is usually something in the order of 17% more damage. So you have +3 levels, this is going to be like 50% more. So +3 levels is definitely the most important one. Now, you would argue that a wand can go to +6, right? So a wand is clearly better. Not a wand, a staff. However, once you go +6, the cost of Hexblast becomes so ludicrously high. And I saw this. I had a +6 wand staff for quite a while. It becomes so high that you just cannot sustain it. It's almost impossible. Like you need to make really big sacrifices in your build to be able to sustain mana cost. It's not worth it. At some point, I just say take the L, go for +3 or +4. Actually, wands can scale to +5. I saw one wand +5. He has spell skills. But I think they costed like 200 exals or something like that. Something crazy. But regardless, you can get +3 pretty easily. I think it's enough. You don't need the +6. The +6 is just going to come with too much of a downside. Instead, you need to make sure you have the increased damage, because once you go to crit, you're no longer getting a lot of increased damage on your tree itself. So you need to get it somewhere else, right? Because you need to have a balance. All the stats, especially once you go crit, you have introduced 2 new dimensions: critical strike chance, critical strike damage. You need to balance all these stats equally, somewhat, so that they're all multiplying, like, 5 times more damage, times 5 times more damage, times 5 times more damage, boom, you have 125 times more damage. It's that type of logic you have to think in, rather than basically putting everything into one basket. So increased damage, like spell and chaos, I think is very good to get on these two, so on the wand and the focus, and then you don't do it as much on the tree itself. Cast speed, I think, is also something that is optional, because cast speed, again, it's the same problem. If you get more cast speed, you are casting way more Hexblast, your mana pool is again suffering, and it's so difficult to control the mana pool. So until you can do that, I think you have to be very careful with cast speed. So that's why I think this wand right now, at least for me, this is optimal. I really like this wand. Power Siphon, by the way, I think is kind of useless. I never get to really use it, and this is a shame. I think this is a huge problem right now with the game. When at some point I will be giving a very, very large critique, like I will write a big document and I will send to GGG, where I will discuss all these things. And I think it's very, very much a shame that there is no logic right now to basically weave between using Hexblast and just chugging out Power Siphons. The fact that Power Siphon is only for culling is just weird. I want to be able to play around power charges when I'm bossing. I think it's interesting. You spend a bit of time charging up power charges and then you nuke the boss. I think that would be fun. Make that play into critical strike chance. But right now, because it's cull only, it just doesn't work. Doesn't make sense. So this is kind of sad. Anyways, so that's for these two. The next most important point is this helmet. So this was a huge, huge revelation for me. So I saw this on Reddit. I did not come up with this because... Okay, so a few days ago, I did spend like 20-30 minutes where I went on the PoE2 database and I looked at every single unique. Like I read all of them and I was looking for ideas. Like what are some interesting uniques in the game that they have added? I completely skipped over this because maximum life as extra maximum energy shield works differently in PoE1. In PoE1, when you get this extra 30%, this is after any increases. In other words, if you then get increased energy shield effect, so for example, not here, but let's say on the passive tree, so something like this, increase maximum energy shield. If you get this, and let's say you have 1,000 life, right? 1,000 life becomes 300 energy shield. You will just end up with 300 flat energy shield. This will not apply. That's PoE1. In PoE2, it applies. So once you get the 30%, it then is contributed to using all these mods, which is insane. This single helmet is how I'm getting all 3,000 on my energy shield. It's completely stupid. This helmet is busted. I think it will get nerfed. I think it should cost tens of exalts. It's very, very powerful. Everyone should be using this, I think, if they're actually scaling life and they can scale energy shield. So basically anyone who's in the north side of the tree, so any witch or sorceress should be using this helmet. I think you have zero reason not to be using this. It's just very, very, very good. Anyway, so that's the helmet. Corpse weight is really, really good. By the way, at some point remember to update it. So I didn't realize this until very, very late that actually, why did I not just buy a new pair of shoes? Because a higher eye level shoe will have a level 16 decompose versus like level 7, and this actually scales to corpse maximum life. So this is kind of interesting. Also, because these boots are still cheap, and I warn you, they will not be cheap. Now, I can spill all the beans, right? I'm going on vacation. I will be gone for the next 3 weeks, so I don't care about the economy or anything. These boots, people should hoard them. These boots are broken. I think this is one of the most powerful items in the game right now. And it's a freaking tier 5 unique. Like you can drop this anywhere in campaign. It is so powerful. Decompose is so incredibly powerful. People should be using it. The only big downside is you lose 20% movement speed, right? But who cares? 20% movement speed. Like the amount of clear this gives, the amount of safety it gives, it's too worth it. I absolutely cannot see any scenario right now of taking off these boots. The only reason I might is if at some point I realize that, for example, there are too many cases where the boots don't work. So, for example, when you're doing breaches, there are some breaches with fire mobs, and they will just detonate all your clouds. Okay, that sucks, right? Then you don't have the boots at all. But most cases, they're in effect, they're just so nice. So yeah, boots are great. Okay, belt. I wanted to focus quite a bit on flasks, so I got flask life recovery and I got reduced flask charges used. So these are mostly things just to allow me to sustain a little bit longer in a boss fight. However, this belt was bought exclusively just to help me beat the freaking sanctum. Like, when I wanted to beat sanctum, I was struggling. Okay, these were just to allow me to survive longer boss fights for a bit. Anyway, something like this is probably gonna be good. For my gloves, so yeah, generic stuff, life, mana, the mana unnecessary. I got dexterity because I needed dexterity in other pieces of my gear. I think it was the chest piece. And I got resistances, okay? Chest piece itself, so here's the big thing. So why did I replace the chest piece? So I was making this whole argument, like this grand argument, like, okay, that chest piece is so amazing, the unique one, right? The Dawn one. It decreases your mana pool, and it's great because then you can do Sigil of Power like crazy, right? The problem is it comes at too much of a cost. Once you enter late game, once you're in maps, like tier 15, 16 maps, defenses are so important. You cannot afford to be giving up all your extra life that you could get from your chest piece. You cannot afford to give up all these resistances. It's not worth it. So what you do is you get a chest piece like this. You first make sure it has spirit, then you make sure it has life, and then you get whatever resist you can get. That's it. First two priorities, like definitely get the spirit, get the life, and everything else, just try to get resist. If you can get resist, you're good to go. I got this one. I think an alternative is probably going to be an ES one. So deferred mod will be energy shield, for example. Sure, that could help a little bit as well. Okay, next. The rings themselves, again, same thing. I focus primarily on life, and then I get resist. Life, and then resist. Cast speed is also pretty nice. If I can get mana, I will get mana. Mana... Well, it's not really necessary, to be honest. In most cases, I think I would like to avoid mana if I could and not get the mod. It's kind of a trade-off. You kind of want to have a pool because it's very dangerous to have a very small pool because you will just run out of mana at some point and you just run into all these DPS issues. So you kind of need to have the pool, but you also want to control, like, balance against Sigil of Power. So it's a little bit complicated. In general, I would say you want to get a little bit of mana, but not go crazy with it. Like, it's kind of like an optional. It doesn't hurt. Like, it doesn't hurt too badly, but it's also not all that beneficial. But it is a little bit. You need some more. Like, you cannot have like 300 mana. Anyways, and then the amulet. Very important point, amulets. So amulets can have spirit and they can have plus level to spell skills. I know what you're thinking, by the way. Now you're looking at this amulet and you're like, what the fuck? Like, this amulet, it looks pretty crazy, right? Yeah, I think this amulet is probably like 60 exalts at this point. It should be worth 60 exalts. When I got it, it was like 30 exalts or something. This is really powerful. I think these two mods, plus spirit and plus levels, are really important. So if you get this on the amulet and you get 50 on the jacket, you basically replace the old jacket. Then you add the spirit increases you get from the axe and you get something like this, up to 200 spirit, which is enough. It will cover you for most things that you need. So anyways, one of the biggest revelations for me was the fact that so the resists are really important, but also chaos. So in PoE1, chaos resistance was not very that important. Like, you needed it, but still, most people basically, they ran around with minus 60% chaos resistance, and they would live. They would die occasionally. In PoE2, I would say that almost every single map has at least a few mob packs that have chaos damage. I would wager that pretty much 90% of my deaths are to chaos damage. Like, I run into a pack that does chaos damage, and the pack just nukes me. Because chaos damage also goes past energy shield. So, yeah. I think at some point it's extremely critical to cap your chaos resistance. You need to be 75. You cannot go short. So chaos resistance is something I really, really want to fix as well. And I will explain the process of how I would do it if I was continuing to play over the next week, but I'm not. But if I will, I will explain how you would do this, so that if anyone else wants to reproduce this stuff, you will know what you have to do. Also, I probably have to remove that thing. I completely forgot about it. So anyways, you definitely have to focus on these resists. The wand, the focus, very important to get the crit chance, the +1 levels and the increases. Spell damage, kind of nice, but okay. On the boots, because the boots are cheap, this is the point I forgot to finish. So the boots, because they're currently still cheap, I would buy a bunch of them, I would just corrupt them. Or I would just look for boots like this that have actually double sockets because of corruption. So this is kind of a nice way to get even more resistance, because again, resistance is such a big problem. Like, I invested so much into this gear just to fix resistances. Anyway, so that's about the gear. The charm doesn't matter. I still don't really understand like what charms. I never looked into it too much. With the flask, I focus a lot on the mana flask. So I have this very fancy flask. It only requires 8 charges. And this is what you should do. You should minimize the charge necessary because this makes it so it's easier to gain. Like, if you get more charge, this makes it so that in a boss fight you have as many uses as you can, but this will also benefit you from the currently lacking charge generation. Something like this I think is pretty good. For life, you just increase the amount gained and that's it. A similar situation. Okay, so that's kind of it for gear. And the jewels, yeah, my priority was essentially I wanted to get Withered, I wanted to get maximum energy shield, I wanted skill effect duration. Here, freeze buildup just seemed nice, so okay, I went with one jewel that had it. Cast speed is nice, critical strike chance is pretty bad. So for example, this one is pretty bad. Like this jewel is the worst one. I will definitely replace this one at some point. Something like this is very good because it has energy shield recharge rate, which is also important. You need some of that for energy shield. Critical hit chance for spells, a little bit is good. Bonus is very good. I think jewels have most of the critical spell damage bonus. So you should definitely get it on the jewels. Yeah, life on kill is not too necessary because you can get it in other ways. I will show that in a moment. And yeah, area effect is also pretty useful. So that's kind of on the gear side. Now a little bit on the skill side. So I have updated my supports quite a bit. With Power Siphon, because I started using the Power Siphon, now I'm not really using it because what happens is Corpse Weight just detonates all the corpses. Not the corpses, but basically kills all the cold enemies, right? Like it kills them kind of by itself. So I don't really get to Power Siphon anything. But in the odd case that I would, I got mobility so I can actually do this like, easily. So basically as I walk around, I don't get slowed down too much. And I got these things. Soul Drain, Profusion, and Life Drain. So these are basically, if I cool something, I will get a lot of resources. So for that odd case, I don't know. Maybe at some point I remove Course Weight. Then this will become very useful. Then Power Siphon, I might start using it a bit. It doesn't hurt, so these are this placeholder current supports I think are fine. Decompose, I started adding some links to it because, well, yeah, it's actually very powerful, right? So Deadly Poison, super nice for the magnitude. Comorbidity, so these are the two most important supports I think. After that, Magnified Effect is very good, Area of Effect. So I removed it from Sigil of Power because I think at this point I have enough Area of Effect. And I realized just how important Decompose was for me, for my clear, that I decided, okay, the AoE should go into this gem actually. It makes it so that also in breaches, when you have this popping off, right, and the breach is expanding, the clouds can kind of chase the breach. Like this is really important, the fact that it can actually chase the breach. So it basically kind of self-detonates the entire breach. Now it doesn't fully do it, you still need to help it a little bit, but it's because of these types of things like increased AoE that it can kind of chase the mobs. So very, very nice. I also got Bursting Plague. I didn't realize that this was also one of the support options. I don't know if it really works well. I think it does, so this seems pretty nice. It's just a little bit of extra pop. I'm no longer doing anything with Sigil of Power. Life Remnants, I had a little bit of leftover spirits, so I got clarity because I cared so much about mana regeneration rate. It's so important to me, like I'm looking for it everywhere. So yeah, I just put it inside the Life Remnants. By the way, this exclamation mark, it doesn't mean anything. Like, I don't know why it's here, it's some kind of weird bug. This is definitely in effect. So Contagion, Chaotic Freeze plus Persistence, so this is nothing has changed. Hexblast I already shown, Blink nothing changed, Essence nothing changed. Actually, this I just have this as a placeholder. I'm not using Essence Chain anymore at all. Dark Effigy, Withering Touch plus Font of Mana, nothing has changed. Blasphemy, I'm only using Despair. This was a change. So because I lost some of the Spirit, I could no longer afford 2 curses. So I removed the Temp Chains. I just stick with Despair. I think it's fine. If you find some very nice ways to get the limit back up, get some Spirit back up, I guess you could put this back in. But yeah, I find it too expensive, so I'm not bothering. Withering Presence, nothing has changed. So okay, that covers the skill gems, that covers the gear, that covers the passive tree. I should talk about the ascendancy now. So the big thing was basically once I was able to do the third lab, I then immediately took off Vitality Siphon and I got these 2 nodes so I could get Sunder of Flesh, and then my build was basically online. Now big thing, so I don't know, it's embarrassing. It's just embarrassing. So it seems Vitality Siphon was indeed kind of bugged. Like it was leeching, and I could see it was leeching. Like I was certain it was leeching because it was basically making so that my life bar wasn't really moving whenever I was actually casting Hexblast. So it was offsetting the life cost. However, then during the patch, the last patch, they decided to super buff it. I checked it, it definitely became way, 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 way better. So this is kind of funny. Okay, so basically blood mages initially in the first few days had literally nothing, because this was also like, saying women's, it was mostly a negative than a positive. It was very difficult to make use of it. Vitality Siphon was barely helping out. So yeah. At some point before I made the transition, I tested a few maps where I removed Vitality Siphon. I could feel I could still sustain my life perfectly fine. So this was kind of my last go that was like, okay, I can do it. So I'll make this transition without actually having Vitality Siphon. The biggest issue, however, with Blood Mage, for sure, as an Ascendancy, is the fact that trial is too difficult. So the first 2 trials, okay, whatever, no problem. The third trial, when you have to fight the Scorpion, oh my god. The big issue is that the Scorpion boss, the third one, when you do Shakira, or whatever it was named, that specific trial, because the Ultimatum one is just too bullshit, like, fuck Ultimatum, like, it's completely insane, too RNG. Sanctum is kind of good. I actually like Sanctum. I run Sanctum right now, sometimes just for farming, like just to grind some gear, not levels, but just, exals and stuff. I find it kind of nice. I like it. The problem is that you get to the 3rd floor, you get to the Scorpion, and then you find out of nowhere, oh, this Scorpion deals like pure chaos damage. Like it's half physical, half chaos or something. And at that point, when you're like trying to do the 3rd lab, like, right, this is campaign stuff, you don't have chaos resistance. Chaos resistance is the most difficult thing to come across. Like it's super difficult mod to actually get up to 75. So that thing just starts nuking you for insane damage. And what do? Like you're screwed. And you have to spend, like 20 minutes to actually get to the boss. It took me so much time. It took me hours to actually finish that trial until I got the final few points. I think I got to level 75 or so before I had the attempt where I actually beat it. So like I would keep going back to map a little bit, get some levels, and only then I would try the trial. And I would keep going back and forth. It took around level 75 until I was actually able to do the trial. 75, 78, something in that ballpark. Really, it's way too hard. The 3rd trial is just way too hard. Not fun at all. And the biggest issue is, well, the last trial. So the thing is, once you get the crit nodes, now you enter your tier 16, you have the crit, you're dealing good damage, now you need sustain, right? So now Vitality Siphon would be really useful. Like it would help me a lot. Either Vitality Siphon or Grasping Wounds. Both of them in tier 16 maps where not getting one shot is one of the biggest issues. They would be so useful. But the final boss, that one is even more messed up, especially for Blood Mage, because it's basically a sustain check. The final boss has so much life, like I think it was something in the ranges of like 4 or 5 million or something. Because it has such an insane amount of life, you basically, if you rely on your mana flask to sustain your mana, you just won't. At some point you run out. I ran out of mana flasks around 40 to 30% of the boss's HP bar. And then I became like turtle pace to actually finish it off. And then I just basically slowly withered to death. I ran out of life flasks because the fight went from being pretty fast to suddenly I'm just turtle pace. And I couldn't really like dodge everything because I don't have minions or anything to body block the freaking projectiles. By the way, at the end of the video, I will show the kill. So if you want, just skip to the end. I actually show the actual, not the kill, but the actual attempt that I got to 30%, just so you see like the issues. But yeah, anyway, so Blood Mage right now it's so difficult. I mean, the Ascendancy is good. I think Sunder of Flesh is really powerful. It's build enabling. Like when you have these two, and if you add one of these sustain nodes, you will become a sustaining machine that can do really high crits, like chaos crits. It's fine. It's great. The problem is it's very difficult to get to that point because the Ascendancy points are just too difficult to acquire. So yeah, that's the point. So anyways, I covered all of this. I got mana regeneration all over the place to fix these problems. So for example, one of the rings, I think, yeah, this has 38% mana regeneration rate. Where else? This amulet. So I had another very good amulet with +2 skill levels. I replaced it just so I would have this with 37 mana regeneration rate. I took a bunch of these nodes in the tree. So I got Open Mind in here. I got this node over here, Insightfulness, just to help me a little bit more with this mana regeneration. At this point, it's good. At this point, my mana is 130 per second. My Hexblast is using 130 per cast, right? And it's like 0.6 cast time. So basically, it's like kind of half, right? So like half my mana costs I can cover with my mana regeneration. The other half I'm covering with my flask. I suspect that if I right now attempted the Sanctum again, because my last attempt was quite a while ago, I didn't have the mana regeneration. I had a little bit less damage than I do now. If I try it again now, I will probably beat it, but I'm not 100% certain, and the attempt takes forever. Also, it relies on so much RNG. I think it's almost impossible unless you get at least a few good buffs. So for example, you need to get plus 50% damage inside Sanctum, you should get minus 30 life on the enemy monsters, stuff like this. Like there are some Sanctum buffs you kind of need, that if you don't get them by the final boss, you're just going to get screwed anyways. Plus we don't have physical mitigation, and the final boss deals pure physical damage. I don't know. The trial is basically just anti-Blood Mage. It hates Blood Mage, which makes everything so difficult. Ultimatum is the other option, but Ultimatum is just screwed up in general. Like, anyways, the trials are a big problem. I think GG will definitely have to look back at this a little bit, because as it stands right now, ascendancies are supposed to be build-defining things. Like, you use ascendancies to really shape your build in some way. The fact they're so difficult to acquire is not good. I don't think it's how it should be. At the very least, then market it differently or something, because we're used to be able, like, you are recommended to try attempt to get the third point at the end of your campaign. And you attempt the final points at level 75 area, which is like tier 11 or so. You need way more than that. You need to be like tier 10 maps for the campaign for the third point, and you need to be the tier 16 plus maps for the tier 11 point. It's completely overtuned right now. Needs to be changed. Anyways, so that's on that. Other than that, I don't really have any more comments. So it works fine. Automation, I didn't try because I don't have enough spirit, and I also saw that they giga nerfed the cast on crit stuff. So I'm just not gonna bother with it so far. My overall motto is basically, I still go with like Sigil of Power, which I use in my weapon swap. I'm still using Dark Effigies, and I'm using Contagion, and that's kind of it. So just between these three rotations. For rares, I will always pop Contagion on a rare, because I need it for defense. Like, I need to make sure that the rare is not gonna one-shot me with some bullshit mechanic. Also, while I'm here, I guess I can show you an important thing. So, right now, it's not what I need. I need this thing. There we go. The Atlas Tree. If you're playing a crit Hexblast Blood Mage, your specialization, I think, is rares. I think you're really good at rares. Rare killing is, I think, for sure the strongest aspect, because you pop Contagion, and then within one shot you will freeze the rare monster, and then within the next 4 to 5 hits you will kill it. Because of this you can go Deadly Evolution. I don't think all builds can go Deadly Evolution. I have fought rares with 8 mods. No joke, I saw a rare with 8 mods. I'm not even sure how the heck that's possible, but that happened. 8 mods. I killed it no problem. Okay, it was like a map boss. It was that tanky, but I killed it. It wasn't an issue. I was able to perma-freeze it, basically. I think we're really good at killing rares. That's why if you're going to hit Hexblast on the main Atlas, you should go for something like this. Like Deadly Evolution is very good. Essences are also very good. Again, just because you're very good against rares. Also, rares are just the best way of getting currency right now in the game, I think. At least in the general mapping. Breach is very good because of the shoes. I really like Breach. I was hoping to start with this video with a kill on the Breach boss. However, I tried running a lot of maps and I couldn't actually get the damn rift. Like, you need to get a very special thing on the Atlas map into which you would socket the actual Breach stone. I couldn't find that thing after like mapping for an hour, and I just gave up. I wanted to get this video out of the way. So yeah, I couldn't show that off, sadly. I think Breach is very good though. Delirium is also perfectly fine, I think. Ritual is not really good. Ritual in general as a mechanic is kind of broken right now. It's very rippy in weird ways. It's not very rewarding. Also, a lot of the monsters do fire damage, so they basically remove your smoke clouds. It's weird. So I don't bother with that much too much. I mostly go Delirium and Breach, and I go for rares. That's why I'll view it, and it works fine. Anyways, that's it. So yeah, if you want to do crit Hexblast, you can do it. Also, one more thing I forgot, Grim Feast. Yeah, I forgot this one. So there was also this little buff, Grim Feast. So this is also very worth. I think it's worth the 30 Spirit. So this basically gives you a lot of energy shield sustain. It also allows you to overcap your energy shield. This is very nice. There are many cases during mapping where I end up with basically 4,000 effective life and 6,000 energy shield. Very good. Definitely go for that. I recommend that. Yeah, and that's it. I have no other really comments. The build works fine. It's good. You can go for it. But again, I said you need a lot of gear. I think gearing is important, however. But it's crit. If you're going to do a crit spell build, you're going into this. Like, you should know this. Like, this is a caveat. Any crit build is going to be expensive. these things do not come cheap, because crit is a new dimension of scaling, which means you need to actually acquire the mods in this dimension. That's always going to be expensive, because crit builds are generally the most high-end DPS builds in the game. So yeah, that's all I think from me. I will leave you with the boss kill, and next time you will see me, I think, in like a month or so. For the next 3 weeks, I'm gone on vacation, just traveling around Europe a little bit with trains. And after that, I will be busy for a little bit with work. And then I will see what is in store in PoE. I will finish up this build, of course, further. Like, I will try to go into the final bosses and everything, clear every single thing in the game with this build. And then after that, I will finally make the jump into mana builds, because, well, I am primarily a mana expert. Like, this is the stuff I do the most, so I will be looking forward to doing that. But in general, I do have to say that when I look at the supports, especially for Hexblast, I'm very concerned. I feel like the game right now as it is, it does not have enough supports. This whole thing that you cannot share supports between different skills, I hate this. I know there's a unique that fixes this. That unique is probably best in slot for literally every single build in the game. So it's probably gonna cost everything, like a house. But I don't know, maybe they should move it away from a unique and make it just possible. Because right now there's just not enough supports in the game, like interesting supports, to provide a lot of build diversity. I feel like there's not that many options to the way to do things. And because also my build has now stagnated a little bit, like it's very difficult to get upgrades. Everything here will need to be over 100 exalts each to be a real upgrade. I think I'm ending at a very nice point. I got to tier 16 maps, I cleared them no problem. I almost managed to kill the 8 Ascendancy lab trial thing, boss, Jiggy, the time thing. I think I could have done it if I had the time for it, but anyways, I don't, so doesn't matter. I'm quite happy with the build in general. I think for early access, which is cuffed, everything is overtuned, it worked out fine, but it was hard, for sure. I spent a lot of hours, and I died a lot, took a lot of good gear to get there, but at the end of the day, it works. Like, you can do it, it's not stupid. That's the most important thing. Like, this is not like a troll build or anything. I don't think it's off meta. I don't think it's meta either. It's not something stupid like a fart burst or whatever they're called. The whole thing where you do the smoke clouds and you detonate them, that's nonsense. I think it's like a medium to good build, like in general. Like, when I say medium to good build, I don't mean as in my build, the way I did it, but in the sense that the skill itself. Like, the GGG provided enough numbers here that it's good. You're not handicapping yourself by going for crit Hexblast Blood Mage. You will be strong, it's just gonna be difficult to get there. It's difficult to scale it a little bit, like it takes a lot of gear. And it's very difficult with the Ascendancies. But if you get past it, I think it's very good. Anyways, I'll leave you with the bot skills. I'll see you in a month. So if anyone wants to subscribe and follow other guides, you can. But keep in mind, I'm not really interested in content creation. I do this for fun entirely. I have my job that I'm focused on. This is just entirely like a little recreational outlet for my creativity. So just for that. But if people are interested, especially if they want to discuss. Also, I'm sorry that I did not respond to most questions. There were so many questions. I'm just not going to bother with that many. I have better things to do than respond to YouTube comments. Some of them that I found a little bit more interesting, I just found them in the spot and was like, I could quickly answer this. Those I did. Many of them I ignored. I'm sorry. Build related ones I will pretty much always ignore because I'm not presenting a build here really. I am in a way, but I'm not presenting it as a product, you know? It's up to you. I give you I just explained to you my thought process, and you can use that thought process to then basically shape your own build or learn something about the game so that you can construct your own builds. Because I think constructing your own builds in PoE is some of the most fun you can have in the game by far. Seeing your own little child slowly grow from being this shitty build that does nothing good, that nothing works, to slowly figuring out the pieces of the puzzle, making all work together, and suddenly you go from struggling to finish the campaign, struggling with the Ascendancy trials, to completely sneezing on tier 16 maps. It's a beautiful feeling. You feel very accomplished from doing it. And I just want to share that. And that's the point of these types of videos. So anyways, if you want more of them, I will continue to post them, I think, next year, because I really like PoE2. I think this game is excellent. It has balancing issues, for sure. There are so many balancing issues. It's also pretty bare bones. I can feel that there's a lack of skills, there's a lack of support gems. There needs to be way more. But this is just the base, right? This is early access. This is week 1. I am certain that based on feedback, they will adjust everything. They always did. GGG are very receptive to feedback, except for very specific things where they tend to have their own like very strong biases. Okay, fine. But most things, when players find it unreasonable and not fun, they will fix. So I think in this case as well, they will tune down some of the content that just doesn't make any sense. And I'm certain that they will introduce a lot more uniques and skill gems and supports, which will allow us to have many very cool builds that will allow to take advantage of this whole system that we have so many separate links, that we don't actually have one 6 link, and that's the only way we play. Even though at the end of the day, this build did become very close to a PoE1 build. I don't know, it just happened like this, but anyways, it is how it is. Anyways, thanks for listening, hope you learned something new, and see you next time, and enjoy the new year and the holidays. I leave you with the kill video.
This battle is our sacred duty.
Rage against the shackles of fate, if you so desire. Of your delusions. Watch your step. Wither into nothing. Rid yourself of delusions. This only ends one way. The sands of time wait for no one. Be slow. You are not in control. This only ends one way. Rid yourself of your delusions. You are not in control. Rid yourself of your delusions. There can be no escape. Your fate finds you.